form goes in the toolbox because basically all your tools go in the form. The form is a window that is displayed on the screen and is used to contain other graphical objects. The commonly used properties are: there's a name. It's a unique ID to refer to a specific object in code. There's a font. Name, size, and bold, true or false. The interesting thing about the font is when you set the font in the form, it extends to all the objects you place on the form. Of course, you can't override the individual objects. The size. There's a width and a height for the form, and that is defined in pixels. There's a text property. It's what's displayed in the top left of the form. The default is Form 1, the initial form. If you have a second form, it's Form 2, Form 3, Form 4, and so on. The default event. There's a form load event. It's the default event. It executes only at startup. Let's take a look at all this. Initially, this is our form. It has many properties on it, but very few are actually used, especially when you're first learning how to program. There is that name property, Form 1. I'm going to change this one here to Form Demo. I'm going to use FRM and DEMO and put it on there. That's how I'll refer to this thing in code if I needed to. You don't really have to. Form 1 is going to be perfectly fine for this particular thing. I am going to go down below here, and much of these other things you don't really need to deal with, but I might want to change my font. So I'm going to go down to the font, and I'm going to, just for a demonstration, I'm going to make it bold, and I'm going to make it 12 big. So this is going to extend to any properties I put on this form. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the text property, which you see in the upper corner up here. It's called Form 1 right now. I'm going to call this Demo Form. And we'll leave it at that. And that's going to show up right up in top of here. And basically, that's all we have now. Now, the interesting thing about a form is that it just exists to contain things. If we hit Startup on here and run it, we get nothing more than a form itself. Now, the interesting thing about the form is you can actually execute code from within here. For example, if I double-click on this form, I get the default form load event. In this case, it's FRM demo because I named it form load event. I can actually put something in here like message box dot show and say that you are about to see the initial form. And end it like that. Do a file save on it and do a start. You can see the message box comes up. You're about to see the initial form. I'll click OK on it, and the form does pop up. Now I'm going to, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go to this form. I'm going to add a label to it. Put this label on it. Notice how big it is. It's actually a size 12 right now. If we look at that label and look at the font size, right here, bang. It's actually a 12 with a bold, true on here, because it's accepting the properties from the form itself. I'm going to make a slight change to this guy. I'm going to take this form, this label, and I'm going to call it label. I'm going to call it label demo, LBL demo, using Hungarian notation. And in the text alignment property, I'm going to change that to the center. I'm also going to change this thing to auto size false. And then I'm actually going to take this thing and size it to be a fairly large label. Whoops, come on, let's go here. And stretch it across the screen. Now I'm going to go into the code portion of this form. And I'm going to add another line of code on here, because you can write any kind of code you want. You can read a file, you can read whatever you want to do can happen in form load. So you're actually preparing your form for how it's going to look to the user. In this particular case, I'm going to refer to my label, which I call label LBL demo dot text is going to be equal to the label was filled in the form load event. Is actually the FRM load event, FRM demo load event, because we named this form. But for all practical purposes, here's our statement. I'm now going to do file save on this thing and run it. The message box comes up first. Click on it. There's our form filled in with the form load event. So you can use the form load event just like you could the click event that you find in a button. It actually will execute code as you start your program up. This is very useful when you want to read a file in for the user who's going to use data from a file in a particular program. There's many other uses you can use as well. That's the form and the form load event in a nutshell.